Springfield's Talk 104.1. Hey, everybody. A good Monday morning. High near 68 for the day. We're going to see increasing temperatures as we make our way through the week. Pretty nice weather, if I do say so myself. There's a lot of discussion over the weekend, of course, about the State of the Union, the reaction to it, and then the hot mic moment in which Biden has this habit of bragging about really telling people. This is really, to a large degree, somewhat instrumental in getting himself in trouble over all this Ukraine stuff, in which he had bragged post-vice presidency about telling the then president of Ukraine, this was pre-Zelensky, that you'd better get, if you want that aid, you better fire that prosecutor that's investigating the Burisma, the company that my son's involved in. And he joked about how he told me I didn't have the authority to do it, and I said, you just watch it, sucker. You just try me, Jack. No joke, no joke. And then, of course, Biden laughed and said, my gosh, before the wheels went up, that prosecutor was fired. Boy, Biden really showed him. After the State of the Union, he got caught on hot mic. I'm really telling Bibi. I'm really sticking it to the leader of that Jewish country, Israel, when it comes to Hamas, and I'm going to have a coming to Jesus moment with him, putting him in his place. Now, there's been all sorts of reaction to that, as well as increasingly we watch our only true ally in the Middle East be treated like total dirt. It's pretty remarkable because the Trump administration, Donald Trump specifically, was constantly derided by the media and by the left as betraying our allies. And this was something that the left utilized to describe Trump, essentially telling our allies, listen, you guys got to step up, particularly when it came to NATO. And it was successful. As the head of NATO would on numerous occasions note, that for the very first time, NATO allies began kicking in more of what they were required to, some actually getting to that point, many of the countries getting closer to that point. These were the actions of Trump that had the left calling him somebody, that was betraying our allies. Yet when it really comes down to betrayal, I don't know that the United States, at least in my lifetime, has ever so overtly betrayed any ally to the degree that the Biden administration is betraying Israel, to the point that they are essentially, they are using the numbers and the talking points from Hamas as part of their public relations campaign to get Israel to do what Hamas wants them to do. And when you see that the United States has become a mouthpiece for Hamas, not just when it comes to the presidency, but you see it in pop culture. You see the Oscars last night calling on Israel to succumb to the demands of the terrorist organization, and that is to stop fighting against them, just to give in. To quit their attempts to try and eliminate the terrorist threat so that it does not once again launch another horrific attack. It's pretty interesting when you watch the pattern of public relations reaction to the anti-Semitism and how the left really feigned this real surprise and shock when anti-Semitism rose up on college campuses in particular, where you had all of these anti-Semitic individuals while literally at times forcing Jews to hide and lock themselves in classrooms to protect themselves, demanding that the Jews comply with Hamas's requirement of a ceasefire. And you had all this feigned outrage, like, well, we just don't understand where this anti-Semitism is coming from. Yet now they're openly doing the exact same thing that these anti-Semites were doing on the college campuses that they acted as if they were just befuddled by. And that is demanding that the Jews stop fighting back. Their messaging is the exact same messaging as the anti-Semitic individuals that stormed the Capitol not long after October 7th, demanding that the Jews stop fighting back. And now you have Democrats openly carrying that message. You have Hollywood celebrities using the Oscars to carry that message. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being the mother or father of a child who was put in an oven by Hamas, who was raped in front of you, tortured and murdered by Hamas, and then watching Hollywood celebrities, the elites, the White House in the United States of America that's supposed to be your greatest ally, projecting the demands of that terrorist organization, linking arms with them, sharing the demands. Wow. Last week during the State of the Union, of course, Biden announced committing troops to helping rebuild Hamas's infrastructure, that port that was destroyed because it was instrumental in the terrorist attack as Hamas used it as a launching point. And you hear the President of the United States announce that we're going to commit troops to helping Hamas rebuild that? It is a remarkable betrayal. It would be no different than after September 11th, our allies demanding that we not fight back against bin Laden, that we help the Taliban, or watching our allies, while condemning us, rebuild the Taliban's infrastructure that they were utilizing in order to launch attacks against us. That our allies demand that we give humanitarian aid to the Taliban. I've noted before, thank goodness the world, including Israel, was a much, much, much better friend to the United States after we were attacked than we are being to Israel at this time. Traffic coming up. Look at the weather as well. We've got the latest news update. The First Alert forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny, high near 68 today, clear, 45 for a low tonight, tomorrow. Mostly sunny, a high near 72, and Wednesday mostly sunny with a high near 75. Coming up, we will have some audio of Joe Biden and Democrats demanding apologies for, I guess, what would you call it? Let's see, there's misgendering. What is it when the left is upset that you refer to somebody in our country illegally as illegal, as they were with Joe Biden? This from Nancy Pelosi to Ilhan Omar. You have all these left-wing activists. This is where they're outraged. Not the outrage at yet another American being brutally murdered by somebody that was in this country illegally, because they were allowed to be. But that Joe Biden dare call that individual illegal, and his attempts, oh, he's so sorry. He's apologizing. And in what I think is probably not great for the reelection of Joe Biden, subsequently goes for a sit-down interview and spells out, this is one of the differences between Donald Trump and him, that he does not believe that and he will not as president, use the term illegal to describe people like the murderer of Laken Riley. I think I'd use that clip in a Trump campaign ad. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447-KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Hey, thank you. Last week we experienced some pretty strong thunderstorms in the listening area, and I know that several counties, they were kind of mainly the southern portion of our listening area, they experienced some hail. And if you were in one of those counties that did experience that hail and you've noticed issues with your roof, I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, they understand that your home is probably the largest investment that you're going to make in your lifetime, so they want to help you keep it protected the best that you can. And whenever you give them a call, they'll come out and they'll do a thorough roof inspection for you. They're going to check your gutters, your vents, they're going to check your flashing, and they also get in your attic and check your decking as well. Then they take photos and videos so you can also see exactly what is going on, and then they're going to walk through that process with you. Now, my favorite thing about Josh and his team is that they are not going to upsell you. If you need a roof repair, they're going to recommend that, but they're also honest, too. If it is time for a whole new roof, they're going to let you know. So if it is time to call Pyramid, you can find all of that contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Have you ever watched that show Love is Blind?
No, but it's all over social media.
I was dropping off or picking up dry cleaning. And the guy that is always in there, he had asked me, he said, hey, do you watch the show Love is Blind? And I said, no, but I know about it. And he said the season 6 said the finale in for this show, evidently, and the concept is where people, they meet one another, and I'm not sure exactly how they get set up, but they aren't allowed to see each other for a very long period of time. And I'm not. There must be some sort of benchmark in which they're allowed to actually physically see one another, meet, and so forth. But in the finale, they had an all-inclusive resort, and he said, and it's in the Dominican Republic, and he said, I wasn't really familiar with the Dominican Republic until years ago. You guys were doing your show from there. And he said he was very, very excited because he and his wife are going in a couple of weeks. And he said it's the exact same
Oh, no
resort. Yeah, he
kidding.
said it's TRS Turquesa. And I said, well, that's where we went, and that's where we are going again. And I looked it up, and it is the same resort
Oh,
that
cool.
we're going to, and it is whenever they're going to film these reality shows, they want a resort that is going to look really nice, because it is really nice, it just gives you an idea of how cool the resort is that we're going to. And we don't generally revisit resorts that we've been to. I think we've done it only one other time, but this was a highly requested one. But yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So if you are somebody who watches that and you've seen that resort, that happens to be one of our great escape
Hey, there
locations.
you
Yeah.
go. Well, that's ironic because Joe commented on our YouTube live stream and she said, "Good morning. It's great to see you." And it was good to see you on Friday evening.
Yeah, that
There you
was our
go.
night where we gathered everyone up and got everyone ready. That's how
Yep,
we
got
always
everybody excited.
That's how we know that it is coming up just around the corner, our great escape. And if you didn't get signed up this time, we shall have more in the future. Marjorie Taylor Greene did, I think, all of us a tremendous favor by confronting Joe Biden as he went into the State of the Union address. And this, of course, is where she gave him that button that said Lakin's name. Of course, he would get it wrong during the State of the Union, which, by the way, her mother was none too happy. And in an effort to prove that he is really in touch and does care about victims of crimes, he described her situation as one in which she was murdered by an illegal immigrant. Now, I'm sure in no way, shape, or form Marjorie Taylor Greene could have ever imagined not only that he would necessarily say that. In fact, she may have, I don't know, perhaps hoped that he wouldn't, that instead he would somehow try to ignore it or soft pedal it in order not to anger the base of the party by demonizing a murderer. What Joe Biden did, however, was a gift to us all because it exposes the truth, and that is, in referencing the murderer by his legal status as being illegal, we got to watch Democrats wring their hands over the fact that he misidentified this individual's status, even though it was a correct and accurate identification, and that is being here illegally. And then Joe Biden himself has had to backpedal. So what this does put on full display for the American people, when it really boils down to it, the priorities of the Democrats in this country today. And that is to put above law-abiding citizens and American citizens everyone else. You look at how they are bending over backwards in order not to offend somebody who came into this country illegally and bashed in the head of an innocent American woman. Bashed her head in. They have devoted more time on air to criticizing Biden for mislabeling a visitor to this country as an illegal than they have Laken Riley. Joe Biden has now spent more time apologizing for calling the murderer an illegal alien than he has devoted to bringing to attention the tragedy of Laken Riley. The first post question he was given regarding the referencing of the murderer as an illegal was as he was about to I believe he was getting ready to board Air Force One, and he was asked the question, and this was the question and answer.
Did you 5 immigrants last night, sir? Well, probably. I don't know. It was technically not supposed to be here.
All right, so you got the engine noise back there. Do you regret referring? Now, of course, we don't get the questions. Do you regret that your policies allowed an individual into this country that would then murder yet another American citizen? Do you regret the policies of sanctuary cities that helped him evade deportation after he had been arrested for a separate crime? Do you regret that during a debate, while you tried to secure the nomination, that you broadcast to the world, every one of you who has been turned away at the border by the Trump administration, if I get elected, come back? No, that's not what the question is. It's, do you regret calling him an illegal? Biden, of course, stumbled around in traditional Biden fashion and then said, well, he shouldn't have been here. He was asked there was a sit-down interview that he would do post that, in which he obviously was prepared for the question yet again. So we'll play that audio coming up. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. A1 Custom Car Care, all of your car care needs, pre-purchase inspection. One of the wisest things that one can do before purchasing a vehicle. Well, it's only had one owner. It was my great-grandmother, and she left it in the car or in the garage, and she only drove it to church and the grocery store, and that was it. And it only has 9,000 miles on it. She got that oil changed every 3,000 miles. Listen, prior to anybody's vehicle having some sort of problem or complication, the day before that, they probably didn't know it. This is what the pre-purchase inspection that A1 Custom Car Care does, is they get in there deep. You're going to find things that aren't on Carfax. I know, you check that, or that Carfax report is part of the purchase of the vehicle. But that doesn't tell you a great deal of things like, is that alternator about to go out? Are the belts worn? It's just to let you know what you're buying. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's the pre-purchase inspection A1 Custom Car Care. Joe Biden doing a sit-down interview after the State of the Union, and the area or the component to the murder of Laken Riley by an illegal immigrant who had already been jailed but released in this country for a separate crime. The element of the murder that is upsetting the left so much that they can't stop talking about it is that the murderer was referred to as an illegal alien by President Joe Biden during the State of the Union address. He was asked about that during a sit-down interview.
I noticed the look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country. The reason our economy is growing. We have to control the border and more orderly flow, but I don't share his view at all.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
Well, again, he doesn't regret, and he's not asked. This is, by the way, an attempt by the media to set the record straight so that the left moves on and they stop worrying about this. But he wasn't asked whether or not he regrets his border policies. He wasn't asked whether or not he regrets the sanctuary city component to this. None of that. He wasn't asked whether or not he regrets that the combination of illegal immigration and crime in this country has rendered us to a place where young women are told that they need to alter their jogging patterns. This is now the approach that's being taken, that, this is more of a jogging safety issue for young women, that in the United States of America, women aren't even allowed to feel safe while going for a jog. No, that's not the question of regret. It's, do you regret mislabeling the murderer? I think that it is significant and important. And if I were Trump and this issue comes up, I would make sure people understand that Joe Biden himself has noted this is a difference between Trump and Biden, that Biden will not refer to any of these people. He's not even, if you listen, he's not distinguishing between the good illegals and the bad illegals. Joe Biden isn't saying, hey, listen, I just want to make sure that what I said, if I regret anything, I regret that some people might think, because of the usage of my term, that all illegals are a danger to this country in the same way the murder of Laken Riley was. But that's not what he's saying. He said that he will not refer to any of these individuals, whether they're murderers, rapists, child molesters, that to him, they are all the same. They all deserve our respect and dignity because, according to Joe Biden, they are all responsible for our economy. All the good things that happen in this country, we are to thank people like Laken Riley's murderer. And for the defenders of Joe Biden that will say, no, that's not what he's talking about the good ones. No. He was very specific. Very specific. In noting that as president, this is the difference between him and Trump. While Trump refers to people like the murder of Laken Riley as vermin, as bad people, I do not see anybody who comes to this country illegally in that way. And it's clear by his attempt to grovel and apologize to the murderer for mislabeling him that is how he feels. I believe Marjorie Taylor Greene has done a tremendous service to this country in prompting this domino effect to occur that she could not surely see how far out it would fall. And the Republicans owe her a thank you for this, as do the American people. Because like the October 7th terrorist attack on Israel, brought to the surface the fact that anti-Semitism is a problem within the Democrat Party. Marjorie Taylor Greene prompting Biden to make his unforced error of referring to a murderer as being in this country illegally is exposing the Democrat Party and bringing to the surface where their true priorities and sympathies lie when it comes to murders in this country illegally and American victims, specifically young women. Let's do a traffic update. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny, 68 for a high today, 45 tonight. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, high near 72. And Wednesday, mostly sunny, a high near 75. Sarah Myers.
Hey, that is me. Whenever it comes to the safety and security of you and your family, it is important to not only have the proper training, but also a good gun shop in your corner as well. And that is why I love to tell you about Brad and his team down there at Quick Draw Gun in Monette. From handguns to home defense shotguns and everything in between, they've got it all. And they just expanded their shop probably about a year ago, so they are constantly adding more inventory for you to choose from. And they've also got a ton of accessories for you to choose from as well. So whether you are looking to add a holster or maybe a concealed carry purse, they have got you covered in those fronts as well. So whether you are looking to add to your firearm collection or maybe you want to purchase your first ever firearm, Quick Draw Gun in Monette is the place to go. And in the meantime, if you have any questions or maybe you're looking for something specific, you can give Brad and his team a call today. You can find all of that contact information for Quick Draw Gun in Monette under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right, Marshall, we'll get to you in just a moment on the Pyramid Roofing Company Talk and Text line. I do want to read some of the text messages. Don't the J6 Capitol visitors deserve his respect and dignity? When you do look at the side-by-side, and this is a very instructive point, look at the way that Democrats are bending over themselves and the media are bending over themselves to make sure that you do not take the actions of a few rapists and murderers who are in this country illegally and with a broad brush paint all illegals that way, right? This is one of the big criticisms of Donald Trump. This is what makes him such a horrible person. Yet they do not afford that same approach when it comes to people who are Trump supporters even around the Capitol on January 6th. They're all insurrectionists. They all deserve to be rounded up, even those that did not enter the Capitol. If there was a real honest media, they would ask the Democrats. They would ask Joe Biden. They would ask Kamala Harris. They would ask Adam Schiff. Why the difference in approach? Why the distinction between those who actually commit violent crimes here, who are here in the country illegally, versus those who don't? Yet there is no distinction between those who were violent in the Capitol on January 6th and those who weren't. Is that not a valid question? Another, let's see, where did it go? I lost the, there was one, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I have a huge crush on her. Not me, but the person sending the text in said that. All right, let's go to Marshall Fairgrove. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Nick. I just first want to thank you guys for bringing up the truth about what's really going on. So many people really don't understand how huge but they can't wrap their mind around how deep the evil really goes, how corrupt and disgusting these people are, how they use people only for their own ends, whether they're lesbian, gay, or whatever. It's all just use them now for whatever their purpose is, for their end goal, which is evil. And I just wish that people would be able to open their eyes. I understand the media won't let them hear the truth at all, hardly, with the exception of things like your talk show or other shows but there's not a lot of them up there where you can actually get the truth. Even Portland Beck, his journalist is
Yeah. Yeah, the Blaze. Yeah.
so it's just when are people going to wake up and say, hey, these people are telling the truth. Look at what's happening around you. I mean, can't they feel it? Can't they see it? I guess not. But I thank you for continuing to try and bring this truth forward so that people can see and understand. I just wish it could reach a huge audience other than just the audience we currently have. It would be great if it could go nationwide and maybe wake some people up and get back on track.
The thing about it that is, I don't know what's the best way to put this. It really isn't ultimately, if your eyes are open, if you will, that difficult to figure out. Like, for example, Marshall referencing that the left, they just use people. And you can see this because any grouping of individuals that they champion that group of individuals until they do not benefit them. I don't know that whether there are a lot of examples, but right now, one of the most stark examples is their past presentation of being a champion of women and protecting women. And we see now that women are the bad ones, in the contest, if you will, between women and men who identify as women. Every time. Whether it is a locker room situation, it is a boardroom situation, it is a track and field situation, it is a bathroom situation. If you have a woman in some sort of conflict with a man who claims to be a woman, which side does the left take? Every time. Every single time. The woman is the hater. The woman is transphobic. The woman needs counseling. There was a period of time when they utilized women, and they still do when it comes to the issue of abortion. They try to have it both ways. I mean, you listen to the State of the Union address, you'd think that every single woman supports the right to kill their own child, the way that Biden was talking and chastising the Supreme Court there. But outside of the usage of women who want to kill their own children, they have no use for them. And you see that when it comes to the transgender discussion, when it comes to kids. The kids in cages. There are 83,000 missing children of color in this country. You don't hear a peep about them. In fact, if you bring it up, you're accused of being involved in some QAnon conspiracy. See, those kids they don't care about because those kids are a reflection of failed policy. They can't use those kids to attack Republicans. They can't use those missing kids to attack Donald Trump. You can go down the list to Marshall's point. Mark my words, and it may be a generation or two. The top of the left-wing hierarchy right now, the transgenders, you too will be kicked to the curb at some point. Enjoy your moment now. Enjoy the glorification. Enjoy the presentation that you are the biggest victim in the world and that you are the most wonderful thing in the world at the same time, and the pushing of book readings in elementary schools and bringing kids to your shows and everything. Enjoy that. Because the moment that, and how this will come to be, I don't know, but at some point you will no longer be seen as an asset for them, and you will be kicked to the curb. That time will come. When it comes to the issue of people of color and illegal immigrants, people of color kicked to the curb. Now, some of it somewhat regional and situational, but it all goes back to Marshall's point. People for the left are just pawns. How can we use you? And if we cannot use you, then to the curb you go. You see it constantly. Let's see. Got to get a traffic update here. We'll continue on. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. You got a home loan need? You got a home loan question? We had Anthony Carricker, one of the Carrickers, on Friday, talking about what you and I might traditionally think of a co-signing situation. And while for a lot of folks in a lot of situations, you're advised to steer away from that, but there are some different components involved when it comes to purchasing a home that you might find is actually beneficial. And so, these are the things that so oftentimes, particularly if you are not constantly in the world of home loans, you don't know about. What is your situation versus others if you're a veteran? Can certain benefits that came with your loan be transferred? Could you come out ahead by actually refinancing at a higher interest rate than you have now? For some of you, the answer will be no. For some, the answer will be yes. It all depends on your particular situation, and that is the customized evaluation you get from the team when it comes to your home loans at iwantagreathomeloan.com. Oh, happy 61st birthday to the gentleman who texted in that he is a huge fan and has a crush on Marjorie Taylor Greene. I still have that tickle in my throat. You'll just have to forgive me. Sarah had sent me, and we were talking off air about this ad she had sent, and it was some Canadian brewery. And they had an ad they put out for International Women's Day. And it was highlighting women in sports. And the ad, it was kind of an interesting take. Because as I understood it, we're talking about women athletes, which I think they were all or most of them were hockey players, and how their hair, if they have long hair, it can cover their name off the back or the top of the jersey. And so what was the point of the ad, that they were going to put their beer name at the
Yeah,
top
so
to be covered?
apparently, yeah, they sponsored their jerseys, or they were somehow sponsoring
The team.
yeah, the team. And so they actually had brand new jerseys made for the whole women's hockey team in Canada, or their league, I guess. I don't know necessarily how that works. But yeah, they took their logo, put it up at the top so it would be covered. And I can't remember exactly what the wording it was, but they wanted to make sure that every woman's name was saw.
I noticed this year, because there was International Women's Day, right?
Mhm.
Was it Friday?
I believe it was
Thursday?
Friday.
Yeah, one of those days. And so things would pop up, see them on social media, ads like that. What I did not notice this time around, and it may be out there, I just didn't see it, but it seems like in the last couple of years, there have been stories about men who have been lumped into the category of great women on Women's International Day. That, there'll be a listing of, we're honoring these women. I think even the White House, if I remember right, last year, in honoring International Women's Day, one of them was actually a man who claimed to be a woman. And that, I did not notice that so much this year. Did you?
Yeah, it didn't really happen.
I think it is becoming clear that it is not working to the benefit of these companies or the, quote, movement in order to push it the way that they have. And there may be a political component to this as well. I think that a lot of these woke businesses that do it not because they think that that is where the trend is going, that overwhelmingly because they live in this little bubble and they think that what is said on social media is indicative of the world at large, that they've misread what is actually going on with their audience. I mean, that does happen. But I'm talking about the CEOs and the marketing directors of these companies that are left-wing, and they do want to use their position in order to push their politics. And I think that even amongst them, those people, that they realize that it is potentially harmful to their cause, that it is doing more harm than good. And while I think some of it may just be the backing off to some degree, some of it may frankly be because they've just gotten bored with it. Again, some of these businesses, it's the trend, it's the cool thing to do, and it's just less cool now, and so it's not really their go-to. But it would not surprise me if some of those who use their positions in these companies in order to try to push politics, that this being an election season, they haven't said, maybe we should back off a little bit because this is something, for the white suburban mom that can turn her off, and they may make the traitorous to their gender mistake of voting for Donald Trump if we don't back off this stuff a little bit. But it was something that I noticed, that there was an absence of these companies highlighting men who claim to be women on International Women's Day, which ultimately I would say that's kind of great on International Women's Day that the focus was actually on women. And for their efforts, CNN's, to interfere in the upcoming election and try to help Joe Biden get put back in the White House, they refused to air an ad blaming Biden's border policies for Laken Riley's murder. Breitbart reporting, CNN refused to air an ad that blames President Biden's policies at the U.S.-Mexico border for the murder of 22-year-old Laken Riley, according to the group Building America's Future, which produced the ad. The six-figure ad buy was run across the U.S. and importantly critical swing states during Thursday evening State of the Union address. Fox News, MSNBC, and Newsmax all accepted the ad. Executives with Building America's Future said CNN refused to air the ad. Quote, CNN and Joe Biden are in lockstep once again. They won't even #say her name, Phil Cox told Breitbart News in a statement. It's shameful that CNN is censoring the truth and trying to protect President Biden by refusing to air the ad. The ad links Biden's border policies to Riley's murder. February 22nd, the young nursing student went for a run around the University of Georgia's campus, but was later found beaten to death in a wooded area near Lake Herrick. The following day, 26-year-old illegal alien Jose Antonio Ibarra was arrested and charged with the murder. He had arrived at the U.S.-Mexico border in September, taking advantage of Biden's parole pipeline to get released into the nation's interior. In August of 2023, months before Riley's murder, Ibarra was arrested and charged with acting in a manner to injure a child in a sanctuary city, New York City. Before ICE agents could issue a detainer for Ibarra, he was released from jail. Then in October of 23, he was issued a citation for shoplifting, some $200 worth of items. In December of 2023, when he failed to appear in court for the charges, a bench warrant was issued for his arrest. And so, again, this wasn't simply somebody who was in this country illegally, but someone who had been caught and deliberately released. And CNN refusing to accept an ad noting that fact. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You want a superstar? You want the best. Top notch, all the way. Personal advocate for you if you are looking to sell your home, looking to buy your home. You want Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. I've used her. Sarah used her for a much greater extent than I did. Many of you have used her as well, and I find everyone who uses her always recommends her, especially if you know someone who posts on social media. You may know a good realtor. And then there's 80,000 random names thrown at him, and I thought, oh, well, that did you a lot of good. Now, from knowing no one, you know a bunch of random names. You can be the one to let them know, hey, listen, this is who you want to use. Do them a tremendous favor, because that can be the difference between a great outcome and a nightmarish outcome. Having the right realtor, and you get that with Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Did you watch the Oscars last night there?
No, I have absolutely no desire for that.
I don't know why, but at some point, my wife, we were watching. Well, we watched a 3-season series called Uploaded, and because it did not work this weekend, which has become increasingly rare, and so we just, as they say, vegged out, just did nothing, and we watched that, and then that was done, and so started watching reruns of Cheers, and then at one point I got up and she said, "I'm going to switch over to the Oscars." I didn't ask why. I figured she had her reasons, and I did see the part where they note those who had passed in the past year, and I thought that was done really nicely. I thought, now that was nice. If the Oscars were just like this, other than the sad component, but just about the art itself and the art, then that would be one thing. But of course, they can't help themselves. They have to make stupid jokes, and then got to bash on Trump, have to bash on the woman senator who gave the response to Trump's State of the Union address, and they just can't help themselves. But I tell you, when you look at that audience, and the reason that, of course, they dog on people like Donald Trump and Republicans is because 99+% of that audience are left-wingers. They're supporters of Joe Biden. And when you look at that entire audience, and I have no problem. In fact, I embrace the fact that we live in a country where you can be wildly wealthy, doing something that you really love doing. I think that's great. A lot of people don't like that, but I think it's great. But when those very same people are pushing an administration that has made it difficult for their fans to even afford to go see their movies, there's just something about it that is let them eat cake, Hunger Games elite, where you have these exceedingly wealthy people. Oh, this dress is $10,000. I'm wearing $85,000 earrings. This purse is $62,000. They get swag bags at these events that are worth more than the average American makes in a week, and they have or in a year. And then they have the audacity to push an administration whose policies damage the quality of life for the average American. What percentage of those people? Listen, I've said this before, and I think when you look at an event like the Oscars and you see an audience in which 99+% of these individuals are supportive of the current administration, do you think they care how much it costs to fill up at the pump? Do you think they even know? Do you think they even pump their own gas? Most of them. Some of them may. Not all of them are as wildly wealthy as a Jennifer Lawrence. But while the rest of us, and the people that they rely on for their wealth, that being you, has to scale back the food that you buy when going to the grocery store, the amount of gasoline that you put in your vehicle to take your kids to school or to soccer practice, the buying power, not to mention your retirement, the slashing of your retirement. And just on everyday items, the spike to the cost of appliances because of these regulations that the Biden administration continues to put on appliances like washers and dryers and stoves. When you find out about it, they mock you as if it's a conspiracy theory, but when it turns out to be true, they justify it. And we all suffer. And all I can think as I watch these extremely wealthy individuals, oh, they're patting each other on the back, giving each other awards, and mocking middle America, is that they can afford to support Joe Biden. They can afford it. It's the rest of us that have to cut back. The rest of us whose children have to do with less. And it's amazing to me that there's millions of them, Americans, who convince themselves that this administration is the administration that really benefits the working person, the working class individual. And that so many, and this is what's crazy, so many of these left-wing individuals, I'm talking just average left-wing voters and Democrat supporters, they rail against the rich. They rail against, quote, greed. Yet it never strikes them as odd that when you collectively have so many crazy rich people in a room together that are all just congratulating themselves for how awesome they are, that they almost all of them support Democrats. They never go, well, wait a minute here. What is it that the left loves to say, follow the money? I mean, they're not the only ones, but I certainly hear it. Follow the money. You need to wake up. Pay attention. Weather in a moment. We're going to talk with Congressman Burleson coming up here in just a few moments as well. Right now, the latest news update. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny 68 for high today. Clear 45 tonight. Mostly sunny 72 tomorrow. Wednesday mostly sunny. High near 75. Springfield's Talk 1041. I am Nick Reed, streaming live, KSGF.com, YouTube as well. Our live video feed sponsored by Springfield Wraps. Congressman Burleson joins us. I should tell you that Sarah said off air her favorite part of the State of the Union was you. There was just a visual, Sarah, that you liked?
Yeah, so I was watching CBS, and it was at one point Biden was telling a lie. I can't even tell you what the lie was, but all of the Republicans started booing and jeering, and so they panned over, and then they did a close-up shot, and it was, you were right in the middle of it, and you could see all of the other Republicans. Some of them were laughing because it was just such a blatant lie. Some of them just had this like straight look on their face. And then right as they panned over, it was like you looked right in the camera and you just had this biggest frown on your face and you were just kind of shaking your head no. I laughed and laughed. I was like, yes,
Yeah.
I feel that.
Well, I knew that I was actually in studio running the audio for it because I was worried our automation would screw things up. But I'm in a group text, and there were numerous texts coming through about it must have been at that moment in time, so it did not go unnoticed. That the yeah, it certainly could have been much worse. All right, well, there are a couple different things I want to ask you about specifically with the State of the Union, and I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, well beyond what she ever expected, has given a gift to the American people in highlighting the priorities of this administration because she confronted Biden. And I think that's just part of her personality is to sort of get in your face. I'm sure what she could not have anticipated is that he would have responded in a way that would cause this demonstration days afterwards as to the priorities of the Democrat Party, and that is when he referred to the murderer of Laken Riley as an illegal immigrant. And the Democrats began immediately, that's where their anger was, not at the murder of this innocent woman, but at that he mislabeled the murderer who allegedly murdered her to the point that he has apologized for it. And he just wants to make sure everyone knows that he doesn't consider that to be appropriate and proper. What do you, when you heard it, what did you think? Just tell us your thoughts on that whole scenario, if you would. Right.
She's that way when there's no one looking.
I believe that.
I've been with her behind closed doors when there's no press, when there's no. In fact, I can say this now, but we were when the Chinese spy balloon came across the United States. We were in a skiff and receiving a briefing from all these military brass. There's no cameras, no press, nobody has their cell phones, nothing. And Marjorie Taylor Greene goes to the microphone and just dresses them down, rips them a new one, if you will. Like she just absolutely embarrassed these military brass and just laid into them, just like she did with Joe Biden.
Did you?
So whenever he responded, what I thought was I thought I heard him say Lincoln.
Yeah.
Or at least mumble it. What's shocking to me is that he's apologizing to the illegal immigrant, but he's not apologizing to the family of Laken Riley for mispronouncing the girl's name. To me, this event is horrific. It has caught the attention of the American people, and he can't get her name right. Particularly when, he's gotta at least somewhere deep down inside believe that he takes some responsibility for this.
I don't know if he does or not. I had not even missed that obvious point. In my mind, I was noting that the media and the Democrats were more concerned about, or whether or not he regretted using the term illegal, as opposed to whether or not he regretted the open border policies or the sanctuary city policies, but the fact that he is apologizing for, quote, mislabeling the illegal immigrant or alien, but not apologizing for getting the name wrong is an even more stark apples to apples comparison of priorities. And this is where I don't think even Marjorie Taylor Greene, no one could have seen this far ahead, that they would take that scenario and create what I think is so much damage to themselves, because it's different but the same. After October 7th, the Democrats began to behave in a way that exposed anti-Semitism was part of their party. We saw that with the left-wing activists, and that was something that I think they had done a pretty good job of keeping under wraps for a long time. But then after October 7th, it became more difficult for them to hide that. And I think when it comes to the priorities of illegals, even those who murder Americans, over Americans, that this incident they couldn't help themselves. And so it is showing the American people where their true priorities once again lie. And I think that is beneficial, because it shows so many Americans who may not otherwise know it, that their priorities are, I'd say, out of sync with most Americans. There was another part of this that I heard last night, and to me, I thought it was somewhat of a bombshell, but maybe I'm overthinking it. And that is the announcement that we're going to commit troops to help rebuild this port in Gaza. Now, this is a port that was destroyed by the Israelis because it was used as an instrumental piece of infrastructure for the terrorist attack against Israel on October 7th. So the Israelis destroyed it. And to have an announcement that we're going to commit troops that are going to evidently be floating out in the water, he promises they won't actually touch land, in order to help rebuild that infrastructure. I'm like, on a number of fronts, okay, here we're getting military once again involved in another conflict, and it's on the wrong side. I'm just like, this announcement kind of came and went, and I'm thinking, whoa, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, no, it was it was one of the most absurd things that he said that evening, and I caught it. A lot of the senators caught it. I think Ted Cruz talked about it on his podcast, that it's one of the most absurd things that anyone's ever said, that we're going to build this other country's pier in the middle of a war zone. And what's to your point, Nick, is that this is what's startling, is the Democratic Party's, leaning towards Hamas. And it's really puzzling as to why and what is the common thing. And the only thing I can think of, and I hate to get too spiritual here, but at the end of the day, what seems to be interesting, this is what I'll never understand why leftists who hate Christians and hate America align themselves with people who are Islamic. And the only answer I could come up with is that because people from these Islamic nations who hate Israel and hate Christians they all have a common enemy, and that's Christians. And so I you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to.
Well, you do grapple trying to figure it out.
It's because it's so absurd to try to justify supporting these people and these terrorists who absolutely did vile, horrific things that we haven't seen since World War II. And yet we're going to defend the people of Hamas who voted in this regime and back them up, and their children are raised basically to go into the war zone and to go into terrorism. I don't understand it. We should be trying to help Israel get this over with. The other thing that was really, I think, was appalling during his State of the Union speech is that Joe Biden used the talking points and the data from Hamas.
Yeah.
He was not using so when he said that there have been 30,000 citizens of Hamas or Gaza killed, Palestinians killed, that's data that was given. That's the part of the propaganda from Hamas. That's not accurate data. And yet he's parroting their information, which is just disgusting. And what was not covered in the State of the Union is that there was an individual who I believe was of Israeli descent or origin who was in the upper gallery. And when that phrase, the 30,000 people had been killed, this gentleman said, "How so?" He said it out loud.
Yeah.
It wasn't extremely disturbed. It didn't interrupt the flow, but he said it out loud. I heard it, and they ended up arresting him or removing him. So ironically, the pro-Palestinian protesters who impeded the president's ability to arrive at the State of the Union on time, who occupied the streets, caused such a disturbance, they impeded federal business from going forward. None of them were arrested, and yet the father of the Afghanistan soldier who was killed, and Joe Biden never said a thing or sent a letter or called him. He was arrested, and so was the guy who dared to point out a lie when Joe Biden was talking about his people being murdered. I think it tells everything.
It also highlights the media's play in all of this, because that was the father that you mentioned there. His hollering, if you will, was, I'd say, the most distracting. It was the most disruptive. And I remember thinking, depending on what this person, because when you're watching it, you have no idea who this person is, left, right, what their cause is. And I'm thinking to myself, we'll know whether this is somebody that is highlighting the detrimental policies of the Biden administration, or if it's somebody that's going to make Republicans look bad and goofy based off the coverage of it. So if this was some pro-life individual or some MAGA American, then the media, of course, would highlight this person. We'd hear all sorts of stories about this is just further demonstration of the dangers of these people. But because it's somebody that the media recognizes that most Americans would be sympathetic with, and somebody whose son died because of the direct policies of the Biden administration, we don't hear a peep about him. It's as if that disruption never even occurred.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. The media has not covered it because it's not a good story. It doesn't look good for Joe Biden.
No, most certainly. Before we let you go, because I know that you have a flight, you're heading back to D.C., as we talk with Congressman Burleson, anything else at all? I know I did see this, just the news headline, House Republicans defend use of earmarks as Congress passes spending bill with $13 billion in pork. All of this spending, continuing resolutions, the earmarks, and so forth. I know you've been none too happy about it.
No, it's awful, the amount of earmarks it's like the happy days of earmarks are back again. But I will say this week probably we have a vote on requiring TikTok to divest itself from China. I've kind of wrestled with this. I'm a free market conservative, but at the end of the day, when you've got a country who has basically created a Trojan horse, I don't think it's a good idea to make it legal or allow that Trojan horse into your country continue to operate when we all know that that's what it's doing. And so it's not like China has rights in the United States. They don't have a right to spy on you.
Well, this may be a good parallel. We have in this country the right to fly in hot air balloons over the country, but that didn't mean that China had the right to fly a spy balloon over the United States. And so when it comes to social media and the utilization of social media, yes, in America we have the right to have these apps and these forms of communication, but that doesn't mean, much like a spy balloon, China has the right to have a device that they are using in an effort to do great harm and damage to the United States of America.
just said it better myself. In fact, I might steal that.
You can
That's
use
a great
it.
analogy.
You can use it. So,
Okay.
well, let me ask you though, what the legislation that you're talking about, what would it do?
It what's going to do is force them to divest or be blocked completely from the United States.
So,
So they cannot be owned by a foreign actor like China. They can be owned by, let's say, some Ericsson, if the company Ericsson, um, the Norwegian company suddenly decides they want to buy ByteDance or TikTok from ByteDance, then it doesn't matter what. As long as it's an ally to the United States and not a country like Russia and China that's trying to destroy America.
and is this an issue of shareholder? When we talk about ownership and owning, is that how when we talk about China owning TikTok, is this because they have a certain amount of shares, or are they outright owners? Does this mean the company itself selling? What does that look like?
I don't know what the makeup of TikTok is. I think it's publicly traded, but it may not be. I'd have to look into it. But yes, at the end of the day, it has to do with who owns the shares of the company. And right now, the majority of the shares are owned by ByteDance, which is the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, and I would further say then, it is not uncommon for the government and this administration to intervene when it comes to certain mergers or when it comes to, this company having this, purchasing this company and saying, well, that would be too much. So it isn't something that's unheard of for the government to, whether people agree with it or not, to step in those instances.
Clear, I totally disagree with any and all of those antitrust things that the federal government does to American citizens and American companies. I just don't think that what TikTok is doing is because at first it was just conspiracy, and it was that they're collecting your data, they're collecting your friends' data, they're taking everything off your phone, and we should be worried about that. And then we saw it play out with all of these protesters, these pro-Palestinian protesters who are young people. And the answer, when you dig into it, is you realize that they've been indoctrinated and brainwashed on TikTok, and that the Chinese government has basically manipulated TikTok to espouse and push forward all of this propaganda.
Well, and this administration too, and I know I said I was going to let you go like 5 minutes ago, but this administration that makes such a big deal and had press conferences in the lead up to, well, even when Trump was president, but you have the intelligence community about the dangers of Russia spending like $100,000 on Facebook ads, yet seemingly this is less problematic to have a country that has deemed us an enemy utilize this device as a way to essentially, whether you want to use indoctrinate, maybe the best word to use, young people to be anti-American. And that is having an impact. I mean, we've seen it.
That is a really good point.
Look, I've had two of them.
We freaked out about Russia utilizing an American platform, and we're not going to freak out about a Chinese-owned platform that's in many people's phones. And from what I've heard, is even if you've never downloaded TikTok, they've got your data because your friend has downloaded TikTok.
Oh, I believe that. Congressman Burleson, thanks for the extended conversation this morning. Safe travels, and hopefully we will talk to you next week.
Thank you, Nick. You too.
Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. It went much longer than I had anticipated with Congressman Burleson there. So we are going to go ahead and jump over to a traffic update, have a look at the latest weather from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt, and more. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals from Color 10 Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny, a high near 68. For today, tonight clear, low around 45. Mostly sunny, 72. Tomorrow, Wednesday, mostly sunny, with a high near 75. Welcoming to the morning show, Wilder RV, one of our newest partners. And there's the social media thing is just, I really genuinely, truly hope, and I do believe, that there's going to be a generation that comes up that rejects all of this, that the cool new thing is going to be disconnected, that the social media, the Facebook, TikTok, all of this stuff, Instagram, that at some point young people are going to be like, oh, that's such an old person thing. Got to be out there showing yourself off, and that there is going to be this renewed effort to just be around other people and be in nature. And some will see that as old school and go, yeah, that's what we used to do. But this is how these cycles work. And one of the ways that you can do that comfortably is with an outdoor life, having an RV. And Wilder RV is a straight shot north of Springfield on 13 up to Clinton. Well worth the drive. You don't get the pressure of a lot of places. You aren't being trailed around. You're not talking about some sort of lot where you have to get someone to open it to look inside. Generally, if you walk in, Wilder RV, they will. You may say, you know what, I have no idea what I want. But you may say, well, we got a couple kids. Or it's just my wife and I, and then we have a dog. And so they're going to say, okay, well, this area of the lot there's going to be RVs that probably will be a best fit for you. Now, these over here are going to be more for a larger family. These over here, that way you know which direction. So they will guide you. But I hate pressure. I hate being sold at, and so do they. And so if you are wanting that non-pressure way of going about learning how it is that you can really, and in a very affordable way, mind you, enjoy real life, Wilder RV. You can find them at wilderrv.com. By the way, the prices you see on the site, they don't add stuff on. It's not get you in and then, oh, well, by the way, we had to add this price and there's a pickup fee and there's a prep fee. None of that stuff. The price you see is the price you get with Wilder RV. SNL opened up with the State of the Union address. Seems obvious, right? And it had the beginnings to be pretty funny. I thought, okay, this looks like it's going to be pretty good. It was what I would say pretty decent balance of course, making fun of Republicans, but also making fun of Joe Biden. But they couldn't help themselves, and they immediately veer to have 90% of the cold open making fun of Katie Britt, who is the Republican Alabama senator that gave the response. And the real sin of it wasn't their obvious attempt to draw the focus away from Biden and instead make fun of and demonize the Republican response, but that it was unfortunately not funny. I mean, even the audience, you took what began as a pretty good, started off good. There's some real funny with the guy doing Biden's doing a good job. It was really hitting the mark. And then they veer over, and it is Scarlett Johansson playing Katie Britt, and it wasn't funny. Now, if your goal is to be a show that provides entertainment, that would be seen as a failure, but I think most of us recognize that's not ultimately the goal. It is, for many of the writers in particular, to make sure you understand where the real problem is in this country. Of course, it's Republicans instead of Democrats. It's Trump, not Joe Biden, and so forth. Now, Breitbart did have a story. Katie Britt panned for cringe State of the Union response. And I did not find anyone that felt that she did a fantastic job. Many people gave the benefit of the doubt to the Republicans, noting, well, they were probably trying to show a contrast between the old, rich, senile white guy for the Democrats, and here's the young, vibrant mother, actual female for the Republicans. But other than that, people they didn't love it. I'll ask you this. What response, Republican or Democrat, can you remember? Can you even remember any of them? As in, who gave the response? I can't. And I watch this stuff. I think that this is something that should stop. If not every State of the Union, nearly every State of the Union, for years I've been saying this. And this is for both sides. Number one, you are at a disadvantage because of the audience, if you will. When you've got the State of the Union, even if it's not good, you still have at least one side that is standing up. They're applauding. They're cheering. You have the whole ambiance of the gravitas, if you will, of the United States Capitol and the announcement by the Sergeant at Arms and then the Speaker and and there's just this feel, right? And then you go to a response in which it is one person or sometimes two in an empty room with no applause. They're looking directly at the camera. They're not on some sort of podium overlooking a grouping of people that are the presentation puts the response at such a disadvantage. You feel this deflation occur. It's the difference between listening to somebody on a morning show that is like a top 40 radio show, and they're it's one person and they tell the joke and you just versus having a team of people, and when somebody tells a joke, then there's the laughter, and it just comes across different. And so you just cannot create the sort of largeness in feeling in the response that you're going to get with the address before Congress. Secondly, I don't think it's necessary anyhow because, listen, these networks are filled with responses anyhow. So even prior to Katie Britt giving her response on many of these networks, you had other Republicans that were already giving a response. They're going to because there's a period of time in between the end of the State of the Union and then the beginning of the response, and you're already getting a response from other guest hosts. Now, of course, on your left-wing networks, they're going to have Republicans that are not. We know what sort of Republicans they are, right? But it isn't as if their audience being given the response, and I'm talking about if the response is a Republican, as if that's going to get a fair shake anyhow. That audience probably isn't receptive to it anyway. Point being is if I'm the Republicans, and this goes both ways, but if I'm the Republicans and I'm thinking to myself, well, why are we giving a response? Well, we have to have something to counter it for the audience. The people who are watching and paying attention, we have to have somebody set the record straight. But you already have people doing that on the networks anyway that are guests. And while some of the left-wing guests, when you're talking about a Republican's response, or some of the networks that have so-called Republicans that don't really give a fair and accurate response, in other words, it's not really a Republican response, I really, does that matter with that audience anyway? And this does go both ways. Trump is president, a response to him. These networks are going to have Democrats on. And then over the weekend, you're going to have all sorts of conversation. I just think it's one of those things that they feel, well, we have to do it because it's something that's been done for a long while, and it's just something that you are supposed to do. And I don't think that there's any upside. I've never, ever really seen there be a response, Republican or Democrat, that has somehow altered the perception of the State of the Union in a way that otherwise would not have been altered by people who are doing commentary afterwards anyhow. I think this is something that the parties should just stop doing. And I don't think anyone really needs it or cares so much. Hey, that's just my opinion. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. HotAir.com had a story. Shots fired. Snickers fights back against the State of the Union, POTUS, State of the Union, POTUS U.S., shrinkflation slander. And essentially, they had put out a posting noting, hey, listen, we're not shrinking these items in order to rip you off. Like everyone else. Like all other businesses, we are trying to figure out a way to keep costs down. And this is one of the ways that we can do that. I think more companies need to start speaking out on this stuff. More companies need to start defending themselves. Once upon a time, there was this idea that companies should kind of keep quiet on this stuff because they did not want to get involved in politics. But we have seen when it comes to the left, that is way out the window. I mean, the left, they will, to the detriment of the company, knowingly to the detriment of the company, use that company in order to try and spread politics. We saw, of course, Bud Light being an example, Target. I mean, there's just company after company after company, particularly when it comes to the Democrat Party's pushing of trans issues in the political spectrum. So this isn't now uncharted territory. It just doesn't ever happen the other way. And I'm not saying that these companies need to come out and overtly say, vote Republican or vote Donald Trump. But when they are being slandered by the President of the United States and the Democrat Party, I think they need to start doing what Snickers did and start putting it out there. Listen, this is not some scheme. It's not a conspiracy to rip you off. Our costs have increased just like yours. We are doing this in order to keep the cost down for you. Either we have to raise the price or we lower the cost of making it, which means smaller product, less ingredients in the product. When a number of these companies, it was revealed, Bass Pro was one of them. When the story came out that the Biden administration was utilizing people's transactions for certain products into certain stores as a rationale to target them for observation. And Bass Pro was one of them. And then there were certain terms like, MAGA and so forth. To me, it's appalling that these businesses do not, on behalf of their customers, fight back against that stuff. That they don't at the very least publicly, condemn the people who are utilizing their customers' purchases of their products as a reason to spy on them. People on the left and these companies run by people on the, they have no problem. It's not even a matter of protecting their customers, of being so overtly political, even to the detriment of their employees by way of being a detriment to the company itself. But some of these other companies, I'm not even, again, asking them to be political, but whenever their customers come under attack, simply because of what they shop for, because it's not in line and in obedience for the Democrat Party, or some of these companies get attacked because they are trying to navigate the problems created by this administration, but the administration instead is trying to demonize them. The fact that they aren't standing up and making sure that the consumer knows the truth and or protect the consumer from this sort of attack, I think is something that needs to change. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. We do have the Biden best moment bracket up. We should be on to round 2. Oh, I haven't even checked to see what advanced.
I'm gonna go look.
Yeah, I got to check that out. Pyramid Roofing Company sponsoring that. The winner will get a 10-ounce silver Mount Trumpmore little 10 ounces of silver depicts Trump on Mount Rushmore. And these are Biden's best moments. So you go vote. And like I said, I haven't checked to see what advance. Every week that you vote is one of your entries in. And then one of you will be randomly drawn for that prize from Pyramid Roofing Company. It's all at ksgf.com. I know how immoral the media culturally has become, which doesn't mean that every person in media is immoral, but on a national level, just culturally, the environment of journalism has become immoral. And it is amazing. How many journalists will report that Donald Trump was convicted of rape? I even saw, who's that left-wing nut attorney over there on up from Steak and Shake on National? You know, we've talked about. He has that sign up. Yeah, and I saw he had put something up about, I think it was after the Iowa caucus, that Iowa Republicans chose to put a convicted rapist. And I'm like, this guy's an attorney.
Well,
Is an attorney. I think
now
he's
you
a
know who you
defense
don't-
attorney.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, really? So somebody, first of all, there was no criminal trial. And secondly, specifically, they said no when it came to the allegation of rape. This came up a couple of weeks ago because there was some other media outlet that was reporting that he was convicted of rape. I'm like, no. First off, again, we're not talking about a criminal. That is what conviction is. They love to just blur this stuff together because they're immoral and dishonest. The E. Jean Carroll case is one in which they, on the question of, do you find Donald Trump, there's reasonable evidence or whatever, that he is responsible for rape, and there was a yes box and a no, and they said no. Then there was a subsequent question regarding sexual assault. On that, they said yes, and then defamation, yes. It's like the one thing, and they insist, the one thing that they said that the jury specifically said no on, not we don't know, but no, we do not find that he did that, is the one allegation that the media continues to falsely claim that he was, quote, convicted of. Now, I bring this up because of what should be an absolute shameful embarrassment of a display on ABC News with George Stephanopoulos and Nancy Mace, in which Stephanopoulos, on numerous occasions, falsely claimed that Trump was convicted of rape. Now, the entire thing was an embarrassment of a train wreck, and he immediately, knowing that Nancy Mace, who's a South Carolina congresswoman, is a victim of rape, immediately begins on her, and essentially it is, how can you support him given that you've been raped? Using her rape against her is what he was doing. He was trying to shame her as a rape victim for supporting somebody that he falsely claimed was convicted of rape. But to her credit, she fought back and said, I'm not going to, let you shame me on this. And I love this, the network, like these other left-wing networks that claim they care so much about women who are victims of crimes and looking out for women. He spent 6 minutes trying to nail her on this, telling her as a rape victim, what I'm doing is not shaming you. So here you had, and I'm sure that the left is really going to come to her defense, that a man spent 6 minutes badgering her and telling her, as she continued to say, this is your, trying to use my rape in the context of, why do I support this person? Why do I support that person? I'm not going to let you shame me. And here the man was telling the rape victim, you're not being shamed. I recorded some of the audio, but frankly, it was so vile and despicable, and not to mention it was 6 minutes long, because he just would not let up on her. Now, what the media likes to hang their hat on, because after the jury in the civil case said specifically no on the issue of, do you think Donald Trump is liable for rape here? So as you can imagine, this is something that the Trump team made sure to note, that they found that he did not rape her. The judge came out to make sure that everyone knew that the judge felt, well, that's really in reality, what they found is that, yeah, it's the same thing. That when they said that he didn't rape her, but he sexually assaulted her, it's basically the same thing as rape. And so then there was a headline, judge clarifies what the jury found really was rape, but it wasn't. And in fact, that's the headline that he brought up. They had this prepped. Think about that for a moment. Because this is ABC News as a network, and I grabbed a headline at the time from ABC News. Trump liable for battery, defamation in E. Jean Carroll suit. And the story noted that the jury awarded Carroll a total of $5 million in her lawsuit. Jury members found that Trump did not rape Carroll, but sexually abused her, and awarded damages of $2 million in compensatory damages and $20,000 in punitive damages for battery. That's what the jury found. I don't care what the judge said later in terms of his or her opinion. I don't know whether the judge was a man or a woman. Basically, the fact of the matter is the jury, found that he did not rape Carroll. That's ABC News' own writing. So George Stephanopoulos, knowing that she's a rape victim, goes and dismisses ABC News' own reporting, dismisses the actual finding of the jury, and gets a headline in which the judge gives the judge's opinion that, well, it's basically the same thing, has it ready to show up on a graphic in order to show Mace, the rape victim, that you're really supporting a rapist. How can you do it? It is almost unbearable to watch and listen to. Now, what Mace went to great effort to not say, but I would have, is because I don't believe her. She kept noting that, well, this was a civil trial, not a criminal trial, and those things seem like you're trying to draw a distinction that ultimately shouldn't be that relevant. What she did not want to say, I suspect, being a rape victim herself and understanding the horrors of women who are actually raped but then aren't believed, is that, well, I don't believe her. She demonstrated all the examples, or she laid out, well, Jean Carroll did this, and Jean Carroll made a mockery of rape because she's out there laughing about it and talking about spending this money on shopping sprees and so forth. And I think that was absolutely relevant. But watching Stephanopoulos, and not to do the whole man versus woman thing, but as a man, sit there and tell a rape victim who is saying, listen, this is offensive to me as a rape victim, you throwing in my face that as a rape victim, how can you support Donald Trump? And for 6 minutes, he would not let up on her, pinning her to the ground, essentially. Aside from the political aspect of this, ABC News should be absolutely ashamed as a network, though I suspect they won't be. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I am Nick Reed. Latest news update. First Alert Forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny today, high near 68, 45 tonight. Mostly sunny, 72 tomorrow. Wednesday, mostly sunny, high near 75. All right. I wanted to share some of a piece, exclusive January 6th committee hid Trump exonerating evidence, and this is largely Liz Cheney. And what has been learned is that there was testimony to the January 6th committee that Trump and the Trump administration had, not just prior to, but the day of January 6th, were scrambling and demanding with great frustration that something be done regarding, at one point, the potential riots, and then when things were underway. And this, of course, runs contrary, one, to the fake narrative that Trump, conspired to carry out January 6th as an insurrection, when, of course, behind the scenes, he was doing everything he could. He was, more than anyone, trying to prevent it. These are facts. Part of the other part of the narrative was that he let it go on to, even Republicans were condemning him because he didn't publicly state something. Well, evidently, he was behind the scenes pushing things to get done in a meaningful way, not just sending out tweets, but saying, where the hell is the backup here? All of that information was hidden by the January 6th committee. Some of this information is all the more important now, given that during the State of the Union address, Joe Biden presented essentially Republicans and the MAGA Americans is trying to, quote, cover up what happened on January 6th when they're the only ones who seem interested in actually figuring out what went on. It isn't the Republicans that are trying to suppress evidence. It's not the Republicans who destroyed evidence. It isn't the Republicans who are trying to keep hidden thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of footage of what happened in the Capitol. It's the Democrats. Some of the piece in the Federalist notes that former Representative Liz Cheney's January 6th committee suppressed evidence showing that President Donald Trump pushed for 10,000 National Guard troops to protect the nation's capital, a previously hidden transcript obtained by the Federalist shows. Cheney and her committee falsely claimed that they had no evidence to support Trump's official claims that the White House had communicated its desire for 10,000 National Guard troops. No, they lied. In fact, an early transcribed interview conducted by the committee included precisely that evidence from a key source. The interview, which Cheney attended and personally participated in, was suppressed from public release until now. Deputy Chief of Staff Anthony Ornato's first transcribed interview with the committee was conducted on January 28, 2022. In it, he testified to Cheney and her investigators that he overheard White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows push Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to request as many National Guard troops as she needed to protect the city. He also testified President Trump had suggested 10,000 would be needed to keep the peace at the public rallies and protests scheduled for January 6th. Ornato also described White House frustration with Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller's slow deployment of assistance on the afternoon of January 6th. Not only did the committee not accurately characterize the interview, they suppressed the transcript from public review. On top of that, committee allies began publishing critical stories and even conspiracy theories about Ornato ahead of follow-up interviews with him. Ornato was a career Secret Service official who had been detailed to the security position in the White House. Cheney frequently points skeptics of her investigation to the government publishing office website that posted, she said, transcripts, documents, exhibits, and our meticulously sourced 800-plus page final report. That website provides supporting documents to the claims made by Cheney and fellow anti-Trump enthusiasts. However, transcripts of fewer than half of the 1,000 interviews the committee claims it conducted are even posted on the site. It is unclear how many of the hidden transcripts include exonerating information suppressed by the January 6th committee. Those documents support the committee's narrative rather than the truth of the events leading up to January 6th, and Representative Barry Loudermilk, chairman of the House Administration Subcommittee on Oversight, quote, the former J6 Select Committee apparently withheld Mr. Ornato's critical witness testimony from the American people because it contradicted their predetermined narrative. Mr. Ornato's testimony proves what Mr. Meadows had said all along, that President Trump did, in fact, offer 10,000 National Guard troops to secure the U.S. Capitol, which was turned down. The subcommittee is reviewing the work of the January 6th committee, which has been accused of other unethical behavior at the expense of accuracy as well as collusion with other Democrat efforts to prosecute political opponents. Loudermilk said this is just one example of important information the former Select Committee hid from the public because it contradicted what they wanted the American people to believe. And that is exactly why my investigation is committed to uncovering all the facts, no matter the outcome. Now, again, this is in complete contrast to the left's narrative and the president's assertion during the State of the Union address that there are certain people that are trying to cover up what happened on January 6th and he will not stand for it. It is his side that is doing everything and has covered up extremely relevant information regarding January 6th. I'm going to take a break, and I want to continue on with some more of the revelations that are exclusive to the Federalist regarding what actually not only occurred on January 6th, but the information that was hidden from the public deliberately by the likes of Liz Cheney. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Avis, the car rental company, they create different programs whenever they see a need, and that is why they created their long-term rental program. Now, the long-term rental program, it is a great option if you are looking to buy a vehicle, but you have a couple of different vehicles that you're looking at, and you also want to test drive them before you actually make that commitment. It's also a great option if you are a person who likes to lease their vehicles, but you're wanting more flexibility with the program, and it's also a great option for business owners needing to add to their fleet of vehicles. Now, with the long-term rental program, you don't have to worry about vehicle maintenance, you don't have to worry about taxes or trips to the DMV, and you can swap out vehicles every couple of months if you wish to do so. It's a great way to make sure that you don't end up with buyer's remorse. Now, if you want more information on the long-term rental program, stop by the Avis store. It's located off of Fort and Sunshine here in Springfield, or you can find all of the contact information for Avis Springfield under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
We do need to get a traffic update and then just take 60 seconds from there and weather, and then continuing on with the latest revelations in the Federalist is much of this information they got exclusively, and that is the revelation that the January 6th committee squashed and covered up the exonerating information regarding Trump, specifically the 10,000 National Guard troops. That what we found is that there was no one in a position of power that was doing more to try and prevent any sort of riot from occurring than Donald Trump. He was the one person that ahead of January 6th was proactively contacting people like the mayor of Washington, D.C., saying, please request it, because National Guard troops have to be requested. The president can't just send them. And so he was recommending, you may need 10,000. Nope. That at every turn Trump was taking in order to prevent January 6th from occurring, he was stopped by Democrats. And, of course, again, all of this was hidden by the Liz Cheneys and the others that were involved in January 6th. So more of those details next. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny 68 for a high today, clear 45 tonight, 72 tomorrow, 75 on Wednesday. Newly released documents show that the January 6th committee suppressed testimony that showed Donald Trump was really the only person proactively trying to prevent a January 6th style event from occurring. Much of this comes from the testimony from Deputy Chief of Staff Anthony Ornato. January 6th committee staffer, January 6th committee staffer had asked Ornato, quote, when it comes to National Guard statement about having 10,000 troops or any other number of troops, do you recall any discussion prior to the 6th about whether and how many national troops to deploy on January 6th? Ornato surprised the committee by noting he did recall a conversation between Mark Meadows and Bowser. Bowser being the mayor of D.C. Quote, he, that being Meadows, was on the phone with her and wanted to make sure she had everything that she needed, he told investigators. Ornato said White House concerns about January 6th were related to fears that left-wing groups would clash with Trump protesters and that no one in the White House anticipated a riot at the Capitol itself. Antifa and other left-wing groups were planning protests for the same day. Left-wing groups had been involved in violent assaults on Trump supporters following public protests. And that was something that we may forget now, but that was something that was prevalent at the time. You had Antifa showing up, people in masks, and they were attacking Trump supporters. And so this was a great concern that the White House had, that there might be these clashes that occur. It wasn't necessarily about the Capitol itself, but Trump was offering up National Guard and advising the mayor of D.C., we need to prep for this. What do you need? Meadows, quote, according to the testimony, wanted to know if the mayor needed any more guardsmen, or Ornato testified, quote, and I remember the number 10,000 coming up, The president wants to make sure that you have enough. He's willing to ask for 10,000. I remember that number. Now that you say it, it reminded me of it. And that she was all set. She had, I think it was like 350 or so for intersection control and those types of things, not in the law enforcement capacity at the time. Ornato was correct. Bowser did decline the offer, asking for only a few hundred National Guard and requiring them to serve in a very limited capacity. Bowser wrote in her letter requesting the D.C. National Guard, quote, no, D.C. National Guard personnel shall be armed during the mission, and at no time will D.C. National Guard personnel or assets be engaged in domestic surveillance, searches, or seizures of U.S. persons. Bowser's decision to decline help from the White House did not end the Trump team's efforts to secure troops ahead of the protest. When the D.C. mayor declined Trump's offer of 10,000 troops, Ornato said the White House requested a quick reaction force out of the Defense Department in case it was needed. He testified, the only thing I remember with DOD and the National Guard was even though the mayor didn't want any more National Guard in D.C., that a request was made to have kind of a, lack of a better term, a quick reaction force out at Joint Base Andrews, being that it was a military installation. Ornato told investigators in the previously concealed interview, I remember Chief Meadows talking to DOD about that, I believe. I remember Chief Meadows letting me know that, hey, there was going to be National Guard that's going to be at Joint Base Andrews in case they're going to need some more. The mayor would need any. We're going to make sure that they're out there. Meadows was concerned that D.C. would be unprepared for the size of the crowd coming to protest the 2020 election, in which hundreds of laws and processes were changed in order to enable tens of millions of unsupervised mail-in ballots to flood the country. The January 6th committee prevented an investigation into the Speaker of the House Pelosi's preparation or lack thereof for Capitol security ahead of the event, so it is unclear if she was as concerned about keeping the peace as Meadows and Trump were. Ornato testified, and again, the crowd sizes were, the organizers were saying there may be 50,000 here, so that's where it started, I think, to scare the chief a little bit of how many people were coming in for the event and wanted to make sure that they would be able to bring in the National Guard if needed for the size of this many people in D.C. once the Capitol was breached. The Trump White House pushed for immediate help from acting Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller. And the Trump White House grew frustrated at the slow deployment of that help, according to the testimony. Quote, "So then I remember the chief saying, hey, I'm calling Secretary of Defense to get that quick reaction force in here. And then I remember the chief telling Miller, get them in here to secure the Capitol now. Still later, he said, the constant was, where's the National Guard? Why isn't, we've got to control all of this. But Meadows understood the urgency, that's for sure. And he kept trying to get Miller on the phone, wanting to know where they were. Why aren't they here yet? So what he's testifying here is that you had the Trump administration, once the breach occurred, they were asking, what is the holdup here? This, of course, is in great contrast to the narrative that Trump was doing nothing. That part of the reason Trump was responsible for having a hand in the insurrection is that he did nothing for, 2.5 hours? They like to say that there's some amount of time that he did nothing. There are even Republicans. I can't imagine being Trump. And you're the only one involved in any of this, that prior to January 6th, we're trying to talk these people into requesting the National Guard and giving them the number you should request as many as 10,000, only to be rejected. And then when the Capitol's breached, you're being accused of doing nothing, but you're behind the scenes asking the DOD and everyone else involved, where are these troops? The Federalists also learned that days prior, Liz Cheney had secretly orchestrated a pressure campaign to prevent the Defense Department from deploying resources on January 6th. She organized an op-ed for the Washington Post from her father and other former secretaries of defense, specifically discouraging Miller from taking action. Now, the reason behind this orchestration, and this has been written in other outlets as well, this orchestration was in order to try and utilize public pressure from former secretaries of defense to prevent Trump's request from being granted. So you had here Liz Cheney and others that knew Trump was working on the Department of Defense in order to offer up some protection of the Capitol. And she got her father and a bunch of other experts to write a letter that would be published, arguing that they should not be used for this purpose, that it would look like it's politicizing the military. See, they were whatever their motivation here, they were doing everything they could to prevent Trump from making sure that January 6th didn't happen. It was Trump trying to make sure it didn't happen. By the way, what does this remind you of? An anti-Trump person behind the scenes getting experts from a former division to publish a letter? Gee, does this seem a little bit like the former CIA officials all writing a letter to be published saying that the Hunter laptop was disinformation? And here we go again, this time with Liz Cheney. Not only did Cheney hide the testimony, instead asserted in her report that Trump, quote, never gave any order to deploy the National Guard on January 6th or any other day, nor did he instruct any federal law enforcement agency to assist. So in other words, she lied. Now, there's much more to this piece. We'll get it posted so you can read through it and see some of the details here. But whenever you hear the President of the United States stand up and claim that there are certain people who want to keep hidden what actually happened on January 6th and he portrayed himself and his side as being opposed to that, and we will never, ever, ever let it be hidden. They are the ones who are bending over back. They are the ones suppressing testimony. They are the ones lying about what testimony did exist. They are the ones who have destroyed evidence after they were told to keep it. It is more of what we have come to expect from the left in this country, and that is accusing the political opposition of doing what it is that they are actually doing. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. On Springfield's Talk 104.1. What to do with those tax refunds? Should you blow it on something fun? Should you stash it away? What should you do with it? Well, everyone's going to do something different with it. One of the characteristics that is pretty common amongst listeners of this station is being smart with money. And we try to provide you information about smart places to put your money. If you have a stove, you have a chimney, having it inspected, having it swept on a regular basis is important. If you haven't ever had that sort of thing done, this is an area I would recommend you wisely use any sort of tax refund that you have. Call Ozark Stove and Chimney and have them come check it out. Well, mine's a gas, so I don't need to worry about it. Yes, you do. Whether it's wood burning, whether it's gas. You may have an insert that's not that effective, that's not that efficient. You may have not only smoke filtering into parts of your home you didn't realize it, but you could have water trickling down into parts of your home that you did not realize because of time and what it can do to your chimney. Not using your fireplace in your chimney could actually cost you because you're not paying attention to it and you're not paying attention to the damage that the weather can do to it. Be smart with the tax refund. Call Ozark Stove and Chimney, have them come, and if they say, what do you need done? Say, you know what, just here's the deal. We use it or we don't use it. We have it. Just tell them what your situation is, and they'll set up the appropriate steps from that point on. OzarkStoveandChimney.com. Also, KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. I have audio from a Madonna concert. Have you heard about the Madonna incident?
No.
This is Madonna at a concert, and she begins to, I'll play the audio here. Someone, of course, everyone's filming these things, and you will hear that she is demanding to know why one of her fans is refusing to stand up and enjoy the concert. I will tell you ahead of time, the reason is because the person is wheelchair bound. All right, so you hear she's like, "Why aren't you standing up? What are you sitting there for?" And then, sort of an odd when she realizes the fan is in a wheelchair, and this is somebody right up against the stage. She's like, "Oh, okay, politically incorrect. Well, I'm glad you're here." So almost seems somewhat dismissive, but it did remind me. This is a way also to cross promote our Biden's best bracket moment. Joe Biden once, if someone were ever to say, "What do Joe Biden and Madonna have in common?" We now know.
That Chuck Graham, state senator's here. Chuck, stand up. Chuck, let him see you. Oh, God love you. What am I talking about? I tell you what, you're making everybody else stand up, though, pal. Thank you very, very much. I tell you what, stand up for Chuck.
You know, even when Joe Biden wasn't severely saddled with his cognitive decline, he still is kind of an idiot. That, of course, was at the time, he passed some time ago, but he was a Missouri state senator from, I think, the Columbia area. Chuck Graham, I believe was his last name, and he was wheelchair bound. And this was Joe Biden telling him, "Stand up, come on, stand up. Oh, God love you. Oh, we'll all stand up for you," which is almost kind of like rubbing it in, isn't it?
Just a little.
Yeah, like, well, you can't do it. Come on, everyone. Let's show old Chuck what he's missing out on here. Got some more audio bits of Joe Biden over the weekend next. I'm Nick Reed. All right, Joe Biden did an interview, MSNBC, and earlier in the program, if you missed any of it, of course, you can go back and listen on the on-demand section. But he was, apologizing to the murderer of Lake and Riley for calling him an illegal. There were other notable parts of the interview, and we definitely see the difference between an event like the State of the Union, in which he clearly has been given something, versus when he's not given something. And it's just, on one hand, the Democrats liked to really praise the State of the Union as proof that, look, well, Joe Biden, he still got it. But in reality, it's like everyone knows what's going on there. Like, clearly, that is much, much, much different presentation than what he normally does. So clearly he's on something. So this sit-down interview, a couple of the things that he was asked regarding, let me just tell you what he ends up saying here. He says not only was Iraq a mistake, but now Afghanistan retaliating after 9/11 and going after bin Laden was also a mistake.
I sat with them and I sat with the war cabinet. I said, look, don't make the mistake America made. America made a mistake. We went after bin Laden until we got him, but we shouldn't have gone into Ukraine. I mean, we shouldn't have gone into the whole thing in Iraq and Afghanistan. It wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary. It just caused more problems in the race than it cured.
Now, a couple of things here. One, should be noted that Joe Biden voted to go to Iraq, voted to go to Afghanistan. Now he's declaring that we should not have gone into Iraq, and we also should not have gone into Afghanistan. Now, I don't know what we should have done after 9/11 then. I guess just took our medicine, got what we deserved. He's talking about this in the context of lecturing Benjamin Netanyahu. He was asked during this sit-down interview if he would visit Israel, that it's been suggested that he speak before the Knesset. And let me find that. Hold on just a sec. Iraq, Afghanistan. Here we go. So this is a question being asked about the Knesset and whether or not he would come and speak before what's the Israeli Congress or Parliament.
You were caught on a hot mic after.
Oh, that's not the right one. Here's scratch.
Some have.
Okay, clearly having some difficulties here.
Yeah.
Oh, for Pete's sakes. This is impossible.
Said you should go back to Israel and address the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. Is that something you would do?
Yes.
Now, by the way, he blanks out here. He's lost.
Would that have to be at the invitation of the prime minister, or could that be at the invitation of the president?
I'd rather not discuss it more.
Does that mean that has been discussed, the possibility of going back to Israel and addressing the Knesset? Okay.
You get the reporter there just sort of laughs it off. He's clearly uncomfortable because the visuals are somewhat important there. You can tell Biden's lost. He forgot what they're talking about after the question is asked, and this is back to the normal Joe. This, by the way, is why Joe Biden screaming a lot during the State of the Union, which we're all told was supposed to prove that he is presidential, isn't going to really matter ultimately, because he couldn't even get through the weekend. Whether it's a sit-down interview or an event like this in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, I have a message for you. Send me to Congress that I can support this right. I promise you, we take back Congress, we will restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land.
Joe Biden there telling the people of Pennsylvania to send him back to Congress, reelect him, get him back there in Congress. So, yeah, it's definitely shows that he is, as we've been told, the sharpest guy in the room at any given moment. Back to his claim, and I think that there should be follow-up on this. Was this one of his moments? Or in that interview on MSNBC, he said that we should not have gone into Afghanistan to retaliate after 9/11. Does he believe that? And if he does believe it, what should we have done? He is the only person who in the Obama administration advised against going after bin Laden. Every other person, essentially no-brainer. For whatever reason, Joe Biden wanted to give him a pass. It's America's president right there. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed. Talk to you tomorrow.